Everybody, welcome back to Witch's Castle, and I'm Will Castle. I promise I am, even though the hair's changed. You can't really tell in this light, but it's kind of green now, which is cool. I like green. It's springtime, so that's what I did. Hi. That's chaotic, but welcome. It's Witch's Castle. We're doing another deck tech today. Before we get into a rather exciting deck tech today, I want to take a quick moment to remind everybody to go ahead and subscribe to the channel below. If you've seen any of my content before and like it and you haven't subscribed yet, please go ahead and do so. I can look at the numbers. I can see how many people have been watching these videos and not subscribing. I need you to click the little subscribe button. Look at me and look at me. I need you to click that little subscribe button. If you do nothing else today, click that little button. And you will have succeeded in making at least one person happy. And everybody should strive to do that at least once a day. No, I'm not guilt-tripping you into subscribing to me. I would never do that. Ignore that. Anyway, yeah, if you could go ahead and click the little subscribe button down below, and I've rambled enough at this point. If you could like the like button, click the like button. That's the word we're looking for. Chaos ensues today, apparently. But all those things help boost the algorithm. It helps me basically get heard by more people. I know that's a little narcissistic, but frankly, every creator you follow on these platforms is trying to do the same thing. We just want to put our opinions out there. I just want to put my opinion out there and see what people have to say. I'm just trying to open a dialogue, and clicking all those different buttons helps me be able to do that. And another thing that helps me be able to do that is today's video sponsor. That's right. I'm a random guy on YouTube who has a video sponsor. And today's sponsor is also the people who asked me to make this deck today. Today, we are sponsored by Wrath. So Wrath is a new energy drink, energy supplement designed for gamers. It's got 100 milligrams of caffeine in it, and it's got an ingredient in it called Dynamite, which is an extract that comes from mango leaf, I believe. And it basically helps you focus more. It's found in some ADHD medications. This is designed basically to help you be able to focus more, lock in on what you're trying to do in your games, and be able to be so good you force your opponents to rage quit. That's the idea anyway. I adore these things personally. I do not have a diagnosis for any kind of ADHD or anything like that. These things just help me focus a lot. Like, anytime I try to sit down to play a new game for the first time, this helps me be able to understand the mechanics a little bit easier because I have an easier time focusing. It's like it makes it easier for me to sit down and do one thing for an extended period of time. And the cool thing about this is it's made by a company local to me. Actually, that's the whole reason I'm able to do this sponsorship, is because I just get to know the people personally. I feel like there's very few creators out on the platform that actually get to know and talk with and meet with owners of the companies that are sponsoring them regularly. And I meet with the owner of this company every week. We've been working together to try and get ideas put together for this. They're the people that have been making it possible for me to make content. And now we have this little bottle that has arguably one of my favorite flavors of any drink that I've ever had. Like, truthfully, if nothing else, these things taste really good. They're not carbonated like regular energy drinks are, so it's an easier time to either sip or, in these cases, since they're the little bottles, throw it back like it's a potion bottle. They're super cool. I like them a lot. There's 3 flavors right now. So we have the green apple one. We have a strawberry. And then we have the blue raspberry that I showed you earlier. And I like the blue raspberry one, so I'm going to drink the blue raspberry one. Unironically, it helps me focus more, and that's really convenient. And it doesn't have the big heart rate jump that I normally get from caffeine. I used to work at a gym for a period of time, so I've had so many different pre-workouts, and they're really good at getting the energy going. But you get the heart rate going, you get overexcited, you get the kind of tingly feeling in your skin. You don't get any of that from these, because it's only 100 milligrams of caffeine, and the Dynamite helps undercut all of the side effects you would get from the elevated heart rate. It's really, really nice, actually. I love these things. I'm very picky about the things that I want to represent, because I'm trying to be earnest, honest, and open with everybody that interacts with my page. So to be able to work with a local company that's making something and be able to have an impact on it helps me feel like I'm contributing more to my community, and is now giving me the platform to be able to help contribute wider. So I really can't thank these guys enough, both for the product they make, because it's really, really good and has genuinely helped me be able to get better at some of the games that I like playing, but also for being willing to support small content creators in a local area. I live in Montana, and you probably don't know a whole lot of creators from Montana, so it's very cool and very awesome to be able to have something like that. It's very small town vibe, and it's very, I don't know, we need simple things right now, it feels like, in the state of the world that we have, and being able to partner with somebody I can actually talk to is really big to me, so I appreciate those guys so much for that. So yeah, this is Wrath. It's available in various grocery stores right now, or gas stations. There will be an e-commerce website going up, I believe, here in the next month or so. So yeah, keep your eyes out at local gas stations. Every single time you buy one of these things, you are helping support me and that company. And also, you are locking in on the fact that you are about to make your opponents rage quit. And that is what we're here to discuss today, because I have brought for you Toxrill the Corrosive. Wrath reached out to me and wanted me to do a deck tech discussing a deck that would make somebody rage quit in the spirit of the drink, because the idea is you're able to lock in super hard and be able to make your opponents rage quit because of how good you are at the game now. And they're kind of trying to lean into that energy with this deck. So I brought them Toxrill the Corrosive. It has the word toxic basically in its name, so this should be a perfect deck to try and get our opponents to rage quit. And the whole strategy is in this deck to make them rage quit and try to win a game out from underneath of them. So let's go over what we've got here. Our main guy, the commander, is Toxrill. He's a 7/7 slug horror, and he says at the beginning of each end step, put a slime counter on each creature you don't control. Creatures you don't control get -1/-1 for each slime counter on them. And whenever a creature you don't control with a slime counter on it dies, create a 1/1 black slug creature token. And then you can pay a blue and a black, sacrifice a slug, draw a card. So, obviously, this is a nightmare menace thing for people to have to deal with. On each end step, their creatures are going to gradually get smaller. If Toxrill sticks around by the time a full rotation gets to you, everything's gotten -4/-4 at least, and that will kill most creatures that are in the kind of mid-rangey pile of things. It's also a card draw outlet. You can sacrifice the slugs that it gives you when your opponents die to draw cards, but you can also sacrifice it itself to draw a card if you so choose, because it's a slug and it doesn't say sacrifice another slug. So there's a couple of lines of play that we can follow with this. One thing you'll want to note, this commander has been out for a while. I've played it a couple times. I've had a buddy who played it a couple times, and I've kind of stolen some of his ideas and put them in here. But Toxrill is a commander that gets hated off the table a lot. There's a lot of people that believe in the kill-on-sight commander idea, and I personally hate kill-on-sight commander ideas. Like, if you have a commander that you believe is kill on sight, it's because the rule 0 conversation is failing and or not happening, and your understanding of how that commander can influence the game is not happening properly. There are some commanders that are geared towards and better in CEDH environments that people should play in those environments. But there are also commanders that can be played, like Toxrill, who are very powerful, but only really have the impact necessary to feel satisfying in casual. Toxrill hasn't been as potent in CEDH recently because the mana cost is super aggressive. So, for somebody to be able to play some of these stronger decks, they need to be able to play them in casual. And I would like to encourage and challenge people to stop believing in kill-on-sight commanders and start paying attention to what that commander is not only doing to you, but to your opponents. A good control player at a table can either dictate and obviously manipulate a whole game, or can help save a game if something's getting out of control. I have been playing Magic for just about 10 years now, and I, up until recently, did not own a lot of very good cards. I have been playing on the back burner for a while. I had a period of time where I owned, like I said, I mentioned before, a Gaia's Cradle. I've had some good cards before, but I haven't always had access to them consistently, so I've played on the back burner a lot. And something that I like to do when I play on the back burner is, even if my cards are not very good comparatively, recognize that maybe forming an allyship with the person that people normally perceive as scary will help me be able to potentially sneak a game out from under that person later. If you see Toxrill at the table and your first thought is to murder the Toxrill on sight, I would encourage you to maybe consider to see if that Toxrill can actually help prevent other problems going down the road, because it inhibits your opponents as well as you. And I would encourage more people to be willing to build their decks to be able to pivot instead of feeling the need to lock another person out of the game. If you believe in kill-on-sight commanders, before that person even gets a chance to prove to you whether or not they deserve to be considered an eliminate on-site opponent, you're choosing to make it so they can't even play the game. That person could be allied with. I like Toxrill because he's a really cool big blue slug. His mechanics are really nightmarish for opponents to deal with, but I want to play him because he's cool and he's thematic, he fits my vibe. So when I play this deck, I've seen people hate me out before I've even gotten to cast it, which is just a narrow perspective I feel people have. So be careful of that, but also challenge people to loosen their perspective on things. Hating the control player out of the game before they even do anything is why you keep losing to the guy who bought a precon and threw an Embercleave in it. I'm just saying. Moving on past my rant, we have some Planeswalkers in this list, and they're all Rage Quitty style Planeswalkers. We have Ashiok Dreamrender. She's here to stop our opponents from being able to tutor, and also give us the ability to exile their graveyards and make them mill a little bit. We have Karn the Great Creator in here. He makes it so our opponents can't activate activated abilities of their artifacts. That's super good. Mana Rocks, done. That'll make so many people irritated on its own. That ability just makes me happy. The +1 is until your next turn, up to one target non-creature artifact becomes an artifact with power and toughness equal to its mana value. If there's a creature with an activated ability you don't like, turn it into an artifact. Activated ability doesn't happen for a little bit. Awesome. And then the -2 is you may reveal an artifact card you own from outside the game, or choose a face-up artifact card you own in exile. Put that card into your hand. Wish-style cards like this don't technically work in Commander because there's not really a board from which to pull those cards from. In casual tables, some of your opponents maybe chill with you having a wish board for a card like this. But technically, it doesn't let you do that part. The only relevant part on this that you could use for the -2 is to get a card from exile into your hand if something has been exiled, which is pretty good. That's still alright. That's one of the versions of this effect that's still usable. But any other versions of, like, literal wish that lets you take a card you own from outside the game and put it into your hand don't work in Commander. And then we have Narset, Parter of Veils. Each opponent can't draw more than one card at each turn. It's really hard to hate Toxrill out if you have no creatures and you can't draw more than one card each turn. Very straightforward, and then the -2 is some card advantage. We're pretty chill with that. Next, we're going to scroll into our good old nasty, scrungly creatures here. We have a few well-known nightmarish horrors in here. Maha, its Feathers Knight. If you get Maha out after Toxrill has put one counter on anything, they die because they have base toughness 1/1. It's very rude, but it's a cool owl-looking thing, so frankly, they can deal with it. If nothing else, this deck will make them rage quit, but it'll look so cool. Blue-black cards just have some of the coolest art and some of the vibes, for sure. But yeah, Maha, super good. Even if our Toxrill isn't around, this will help make it so we can mitigate the board a little bit without having to rely entirely on our big sluggy boy. We've got Shieldred the Apocalypse in here. Listen, this card's just good. This card has all of the words that we care about. Whenever you draw a card, you gain 2 life, and whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life. We want to irritate our opponents, and nothing irritates an opponent more than having to remind them that them breathing does something. Same reason like Rhystic Study irritates people. We've also got Hullbreaker Horror in here. This card can be used for a couple of potential infinite combos with mana rocks, because you can basically tap a mana rock if it produces more mana than it casts for in response to the trigger, and return it to your hand, and then just infinitely recast them and tap them for mana. Infinite mana in this deck will allow us to draw our whole deck because of Toxrill's ability. So basically, if you can generate infinite mana, you can sacrifice Toxrill, who is a slug, and draw a card. Since you have the mana to cast it, it doesn't matter that commander tax applies because it's infinite. Recast Toxrill, sacrifice him again, draw a card. This gives you infinite death triggers, sacrifice triggers, and cards drawn. You just need to be able to produce infinite colored mana and be able to pick the colors. But yeah, that'll draw you through your whole deck. That Thassa's Oracle will help you win. That's just how you win these days if you're drawing your whole deck. Seems pretty decent to me. We've got Talion in here, being able to pick a number. I believe the number is like somewhere between 1 and 3 usually, depending on what your pod looks like. You can also just look at the pod and go, oh, all of my opponents are playing 5-cost precon commanders. I'll say 5 just to irritate them. Admittedly, because part of the point of this deck is indeed to get a rage quit out of at least one person, mild psychological warfare will be implied. Just make sure you tell everybody before you sit down to play the game that you are there to try and piss people off. Pardon my French microphone. Why am I looking at the microphone like it's a fourth wall to break? So, we've got Jin-Gitaxias Core Augur in here. This guy is bonkers. I was playing Magic in high school when one of these the Master sets came out. These cards got reprinted. I remember the first time I ever got to reanimate a Jin-Gitaxias. It felt like the single coolest thing I ever did in my life, and then it got Swords to Plowshares. Because that's just how that works. But, super good card. You get to draw a bunch of cards. Your opponents do not get to have cards in hand, and it has Flash. If you flash this in at the right time after Toxrill's been able to murder a bunch of the board, you'll be able to develop this and hopefully be able to sneak it in on the right opponent's turn to make them lose their hand. There is generally going to be 1 or 2 people at the table who will refuse to adopt the don't kill on sight mentality, which is good. At least one person threat prioritizing is good. All 3 people hyper-targeting somebody is unnecessary. But one person deciding, hey, that's the problem, that's fine. you just nuke their hand with this Jin-Gitaxias. And hopefully draw all the answers to be able to keep everybody else from stopping you once you've presented the fact that you can do this. Let's see here. Sludge Monster's another good one in here. When it enters, you put a slime counter on something, and it will also innately make everything with slime counters into tutus, which will make it so much easier to kill them with Toxrill. That's just generically good. Came out in the same set. Makes sense to me. Spellskite in here to help divert some of the removal away from our commander, and Yahenni so that we can sacrifice some of our slugs, put him on a big guy, and he's indestructible, so we'll just beat the crap out of our opponents with him. Rolling down into our sorceries, we don't have a whole lot, but all three of them are going to make somebody angry. Toxic Deluge, turn your life total into the ability to kill a bunch of creatures. Generically good black card. Play it in any deck that needs board wipes and is black. Raven Form is a fairly simple removal spell that I think is highly underrated and slept on. The mana cost is a little brutal, but thanks to the foretell, you can still cast it at instant speed as long as you choose to foretell it, and that will give you an instant speed way to exile an artifact or a creature in blue. And I find that if I'm in a blue deck that doesn't have white, I play Raven Form. And there's another one that exiles a creature or an artifact and gives them a 4/4 elemental. I know a 4/4 is a big dingus guy, but also blue having ways to exile things forever. If I'm not in white, I'm going to run the blue versions of those cards. And Raven Form, to me, is one of them. And Foretell, people have kind of forgotten exists with some of the deck exceptions. Things like Flubs obviously can do Foretell very well. There are decks that care about it, but enough of these cards don't actually get used for their Foretell costs that the one or two times you do it, it'll catch people off guard. And I feel like Raven Form's good enough to warrant an include in pretty much any deck that is blue, not white, and needs removal. Mass Diminish is in here because it's funny and functionally a board wipe if we can get our commander out and even put just one counter on everything. It says until your next turn, creatures target player controls have base power and toughness 1/1. Remember how I said earlier there will always be at least one person that will recognize that you're the problem? They don't get to recognize it if they're a little 1/1 covered in slime. Scrolling down here into the instance, we've got mostly counter spells and interaction in here, because that's the things that irritate people. We don't have any crazy super expensive counter spells in here, because I'm already running some higher end expensive cards. The price tag on this deck is already rather significant. But I kind of went a little ham, so bear with me a little bit. We've got Dark Ritual in here for mana, Cyclonic Rift, it's another board wipe, irritates people, one-sided, feels really good. An offer you can't refuse, it's a counter spell that gives them treasure, they can't feel that bad about it. Same with Swang Song and Strict Serenade, they're both counter spells that will hit specific card types and then give our opponent something to replace it. It'll make it feel a little less bad. That's kind of how I ran with all of the removal / counter spells in here, because Pongify and Rapid Hybridization both also give them a thing. Lazotep Plating is actually a personal favorite card of mine, because I have not ever mustered up the will to go buy a Teferi's Protection. It's a really good card. I've even gotten a chance to play a Teferi's Protection from a deck that I was borrowing, but I've never mentally been able to convince myself to go buy one, because I have 15 copies of Lazotep Plating. I just use this card. It's not as good, but you and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. If you care about any graveyard shenanigans, people trying to exile your graveyard, this card will make them go, oh wow, my Tormod's Crypt is not actually nearly as free as I felt it was. And it also gives you a little zombie, which is totally fine. There's tokens being fed into other things is a theme of this deck. That's totally fine. And it will irritate your opponents that you didn't even counterspell them. You just said, no, actually that doesn't happen. The other two major instances in here are Flatline, which makes your creatures your opponents control have base power and toughness 0/1 until end of turn. Toxrill kills them instantly if they have 1 slime counter. Polymorphous Jest, same deal. Each creature target player controls loses all abilities and becomes frogs. One-sided, murder somebody's creatures. Pretty decent. Scrolling down into the artifacts, we have so many things here that are just designed to make people mad. I'm not going to go too in-depth over too many of the mana rocks. They're fairly obvious at this point. But I'll go over Ashnod's Altar, turning our slugs into mana. Very good for us. It'll help us have an easier time recasting our commander, even. Crawl space. No more than 2 creatures can attack you each combat. Makes it harder for us to get straight up murdered out of the game. Awesome. I dig it. Damping Sphere. If a land is tapped for 2 mana, it produces colorless instead of any other type of mana. And each spell a player casts costs 1 more to cast for each other spell that player has cast this turn. Storm is not going to be happening, and frankly, for us, we're only looking to cast maybe 1 or 2 spells each turn once we've established a lock. So wait until a little bit later in the game and use this to keep control once you've already established it. Isochron Scepter's in here because we're doing another combo in here. We have Isochron Scepter with the Dramatic Reversal up here. For those who don't know, you imprint the Isochron Scepter with Dramatic Reversal. It says pay 2, tap it, copy the card imprinted on it. Dramatic Reversal untaps all your non-land permanents. So as long as you have mana rocks and or creatures that add up for tapping 3 total mana or more, you can make infinite mana, because you'll pay 2, cast the spell that is imprinted on the scepter, it'll untap the scepter and the mana rocks you use to cast it. You're hopefully floating 1, maybe 2 extra mana, and you repeat the process infinitely. And as we discussed earlier, infinite mana in this deck will give us the ability to draw out our whole deck on the spot with our commander. It's sorcery speed because you have to cast him, but as soon as you have infinite mana, you can present a win because the commander is the outlet. An alternate option you have is you can just straight up slap counterspells on this. If for some reason your Dramatic Reversal disappears early into the game, gets removed in some way, or you just really desperately need to be able to repeatedly counter things, slapping a counterspell on this is totally fine and also a very good way to get your opponents to rage quit. Now for one of my favorites. Karma Spell is in here. It's an artifact that says treat all swamps in play as 1/1 creatures. Now they can be enchanted, killed, and so forth, and they can be tapped either for mana or to attack. This card's in here because we are also running Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth. So Urborg says each land is a swamp in addition to its other types. So what this will do is it'll turn all lands into swamps, and then Karma Spell will turn all those swamps that are now, or lands that are now all swamps, into 1/1 creatures, and on your end step, Toxrill will kill them all because they're 1/1 creatures, which is super rude and something that people have been talking about since this card came out. It's been one of the main ways this deck wins since this commander came out. It's part of why it stopped being so popular, is because people were playing this deck and Karma Spelling people and going, aha, I killed you, and either deciding they didn't like doing that or getting hated out every time they did do that, so they didn't get the opportunity to continue doing it. I think part of the problem is just that people get excited about these big, cool control commanders without taking the time to learn the timing necessary to be able to play control properly in a 4-player setting. Karma Spell is great and will do exactly what we want it to, but it will get you hated out of the table if you choose to always play this as a card early in the game just so you can go, aha, see, I had all the pieces. I could blow up all the lands, and now I'm sitting here victorious. But it doesn't always guarantee you the ability to win, is the issue. It's not a combo that makes it so you play it and go, okay, this happens. Unless you guys do something, I win. Feasibly, there is plenty of ways to get around this after it has already happened, because each player will get new turns to play lands. If any of them has 1 mana removal, they have those options. But people who play control, and specifically these big scary nightmarish control commanders sometimes get caught up in the need to develop those things quickly to show the thing that they're trying to do. And that's part of why the stigma grows. Control pieces like this are best implemented when they can immediately win you the game, or they can immediately lose your opponents the game. Technically, losing all lands sucks, but like if they have other creatures around still, when you've done this, they still have full boards of creatures to interact with. You've now just created this situation where they still have creatures that they now have to watch slowly die, and they have no lands. That's why that stigma builds and grows. Admittedly, part of what we wanted to do with this deck is get people to rage quit, so you can still choose to do that. I'm just telling you, as a friend, in the future, if you're wondering why your control decks get hated out all the time, they have a negative stigma about it because you tried to control too hard, too fast, too aggressively. Control in Commander is best when it just sits back for the early turns, puts out a couple of value engine pieces, interacts with the right creatures, and then waits until the late game to drop all the big scary stuff that makes control. That's been how the play pattern exists in 60 card for as long as I have been aware of it, at least. And that's the pattern that people should try to implement into Commander. The problem with Commander is it makes people forget that they need to adapt the 60 card strategies to the bigger Commander games. You have 3 extra opponents. Trying to rush out all of your things like that is just going to get you interacted with and potentially hated because you're doing it before 3 other people get to do it. Control in a casual Commander game needs to sit back, let people scurry about for a little bit, develop a couple engines, and then lock it down at the end. That's usually how it has the best time doing things, at least from my perspective. And I would encourage you, if you would like to play Control and not get hated out of your games, to do that. However, if you're like me in this instance and want to get hated out of the game, you play Korma Spell and you turn all of their lands into creatures and watch them die. And then you play Winter Orb to make all their stuff not untap. You play Torpor Orb to keep all of their creatures' abilities from happening. You play Vexing Bauble to keep them from casting free spells. And you play Weathering Runestone, or Weathered, Runestone, to keep them from getting stuff back out of their graveyards. Same with Grafdigger's Cage. It's full-on stacks pieces in here. I am not going to lie. These are all just things that say the word players can't. Because that makes Magic players mad. Because we're here to sit down and play a game. And I want you to rage quit. So I'm just going to play the game that says you actually don't get to play the game. Scrolling down into the enchantments here, we have quite a selection of things. Unstoppable Plan is a new card that came out in Aether Drift. I don't know why blue needed this effect, but I, as a blue player, will not complain. It's going into all of my blue decks from now until the end of time. At the beginning of your end step, untap all non-land permanents you control. This card's really good. We want open mana. We're a blue-black deck. We got to be able to counter spells. Open mana helps us. This helps untap all of our mana rocks. Frozen Ether, artifacts, creatures, and lands your opponents control come into play tapped. If you're able to play this card at the right time after you've been able to either murder up the board pretty good or even Korma Spell a bunch of people's lands, this card will make it functionally impossible for them to be able to catch back up as long as you continue to build your momentum. I would never play this card if it's the only card in my hand. I will only ever play this card if I have 4 or more cards with it, because I want to be able to play this and capitalize on the fact that they are slowed down now. And they're going to be sitting there getting frustrated thinking about what thing they're going to play to go tapped. I've already got 4 cards in my hand, and I don't have to worry about this. Done. Dress down to either prevent creatures from our opponent's side causing issues with us on their abilities, or you can also be political and choose to use it on in a way that would help your opponents as a political scheme. because the politics game is also another really good way to irritate people. People in Commander who are not good at the politics game hate when it is used to prevent them from doing something. So absolutely use the power of politics and make deals with people. It's part of our job as control players in Commander to help reassure our fellow players. Yes, we are there to win the game, but I'm here because I'm trying to see if I am smart enough, frankly, to control a game. I am not here to try and purposefully bully you and or make you not able to play. That's my desire as a control player. I just want to see if I'm smart enough to stop everything. I am not trying to belittle people with my control. And that's part of why there's all that negative stigma, is because there's a lot of people who play control to do that. I'm just here to see if I'm smart enough. And this card lets me make political deals with people because I can keep my Toxrill from killing their creatures, because Toxrill will lose all abilities for just their turn. You can make a political deal with somebody to get them to swing hard at somebody that is actively actually causing you a problem. We have black market connections for extra card advantage, token generation, since it's a shapeshifter. It's a slug, sacrifice it for more cards, and it also gives us treasure. Treasure is mana. We're a blue-black deck. We're kind of hungry for mana. Speaking of black markets and mana, we have black market that makes a bunch of mana every time creatures die. Well, not every time. It gets counters, and then those pop during your main phase to give you mana. A bunch of stuff is dying. We're here to make our opponents rage quit. If we're not killing a bunch of their creatures, frankly, we're not doing our jobs. So this will help us get some of that mana back. Back to basics. This card is Redonkulous. Non-basic lands don't untap during their controller's untap steps. We live in a world where there's like 4 different fetchable non-basic dual lands that aren't even the expensive ones like the shocks or the surveil lands. This card's just gonna get some work done, and it will irritate people because there will be one person at the table who goes, oh cool, I actually have mostly basics, this doesn't hurt me a lot, and the one person who has mostly non-basics will sit there and feel like they've been targeted, and that's a good way to get people to rage quit out of the game. Arcane Laboratory. Each player can't play more than one spell each turn. We don't really care too much about that. We have a big giant slug, and he functionally casts like 3 spells on his own on everybody's turn. Why not keep our opponents from being able to do anything else? If they're going to choose to try and kill our commander, we better make it the only thing they can choose to do that turn. Either kill the Arcane Laboratory. Well, they can choose to do that if they do that first. But ultimately, it makes it harder for people to make those decisions. 1 spell per turn. We have a big dingus slug. We don't need to worry about that. Beat down with the slug. And I'm pretty sure that's it in terms of anything super interesting. Yes, we are running a bunch of non-basic lands in here, but we are also running 10 total basic lands. So our back to basics could, in theory, harm us a little bit. But we have enough basic lands, we should be able to mitigate that at least enough. And you're the control player. You have control over when you play those cards. That doesn't make this a bad card. You just need to learn, and I just need to learn, when the appropriate time to play them is to maximize its effect on our opponents and minimize their effects on us. Also, Glacial Chasm. This is a land that we've talked about before. I like this card a lot. It's a game changer. It's on the game changers list. I put it in here because it'll irritate people. Because people don't pack land removal, even though they should. Always pack at least 1 piece of land removal, because the Gaia's Cradle will feel a lot less bad on you if you get to use a 25-cent card to blow it up. Play land removal. This card exists. More people are going to start playing it because it's a game changer. Play land removal. But also, play this card, because it's good. Gemstone Caverns, because nothing irritates people more than the fact that you get a free land if it just happens to be in your hand when you start the game. And I think that is actually it. There's some generic value lands in here. Otawara we've talked about. It's just good. Command Beacon, our commander costs 7 mana, and people will kill it repeatedly. This will make it hurt at least a little bit less, because it'll put it into our hand, and we'll be able to subvert command attacks at least once. And sometimes all you need is once. But yeah, that's it for the video today, folks. And this is my, again, first ever sponsored video by the folks over at Wrath. The little energy drink bottles that I was showing earlier at the beginning of this video. They sponsored this video looking for a deck that would make people rage quit and kind of embody the toxic gamer vibe. And I feel like I've presented a pretty decent pile here. And also, hopefully, have presented some perspectives that can give people trying to get into Control in Commander some insight on ways that might make it a little bit easier for them, and ways that they can manipulate the game around them to be able to achieve the outcome they want, even though people will actively be targeting them. If people are going to hate and or kill on sight certain commanders, then it is our time to step up and make them rage quit even harder. If you will kill my commander before I even get to play the game, I will make sure the rest of my deck makes sure you wish you kept your removal. And that's the vibe, and that's the video. Thank you guys again so much for watching. If you could do me a favor and go ahead and click the subscribe button like we said earlier. Click the like button because you like toxic Magic decks and being a toxic player. And go ahead and click the bell so that you get notified when I'm making more videos. And check out the local grocery stores and gas stations near you, anywhere where energy supplements will be sold. Like, every time one of these gets sold, it helps me. Helping those guys helps me. If they're a local company, I talk to them, and genuinely, I am here making this video because those guys believed in my ability to do so. So every time you buy one of these little bottles and help support Wrath, you help support me. And also, you will have a genuinely pretty decent time with it. It tastes really good. There's more flavors coming down the line. I get to see a lot of the behind the scenes on it. It's really cool and exciting. I've been working with them to get to the point where they have these now, and it really does mean a lot to be able to get to hold this bottle and be a part of something like that. So absolutely, if you guys wouldn't mind and can handle some caffeine, and also are prone to wanting to get your friends to rage quit in games, absolutely go ahead and pick up some Wrath, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.